Greetings! We invite you to join us as we prepare the cottage garden for summertime. It's one of our favorite times of the year at Cobweb Cottage. Our hearts awake when nature sings and birdsongs fill the air on dew-dropped mornings. The ferns have unfurled alongside other old familiar flower friends, and the peaceful cemetery next door is now bursting with new life. Small spoon. We've spent less of our time at the cottage the last few months than we would have preferred, so we've gotten off to a bit of a late start with the spring cleaning and tidying up of the garden. But it's never too late to start something that brings you joy and makes you feel grounded. Even when you have precious little time, miracles can grow even in tiny spaces. This time of year, we're bursting with wanting to accomplish all of our outdoor projects, but some have to wait longer than others. Our poor little shed seems to have been inhabited by some critters over the winter, who had cozy pinecone snacks in the shelter of the shed. We're glad the broken doors could serve as a shield from the cold, but now it's time to freshen up a little bit. Lately, we've spent most of our spare time gardening, and even if we're very much learning as we go, we have hopes of creating a secluded haven and meeting ground for us and the wildlife. Hello there.
Hello. As we let the plants settle in, we thought it would be nice with a really nice cup of tea and to share some cobweb critter stories.
Yes, because they've been super active lately, and we've seen some really interesting things go on around here that we wanted to share with you.
So we were walking around in the graveyard one day, and we saw one of the bird houses where a little bit the door was open, and the whole nest had fallen out, and among the nest pieces I saw crushed bluebird egg. It was
so
horrible.
Sad.
However, it was one egg who were whole. So we had a little struggle to kind of put it back in the nest, and also like update the nest with some security.
On the outside of the birdhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully the bird comes back, and we will see at least one little newborn bluebird.
We really hope so, because we waited around a little bit after doing that to see if any bluebird would come to the birdhouse. And we did see them land on there, but they also seemed a little confused. I mean, I'm sure they were confused that their whole bird nest fell out.
I mean,
when they tried to go in.
It would be the same as if we found our bed fall out.
And their eggs were all crushed.
I know. As sad as it was to see all the broken eggs, we are hopeful because we read up a little bit on bluebirds, and it seems that the egg we put back in the nest have a really high chance to make it.
Yeah. So we've been checking on it a little bit here and there, and so far, I mean, I don't know exactly when they're supposed to hatch, but hopefully it'll survive. If not, we tried.
It's just not every day you see a bluebird egg.
I know.
They're really beautiful.
At first we thought maybe we should try to take it to the cottage and take care of it, but we don't really have the equipment for that. And when we saw the parents flying around looking a little confused, we thought, okay, hopefully they'll figure it out and it'll be okay.
So Lindsay, you experienced a special guest the other day.
I did. You were at the studio.
And you had a cup of tea.
I was having a cup of tea in the kitchen, and the kitchen window faces out to the cemetery, and it's a really nice view. I like to sit there and watch all the critters. But what I was not expecting was a rather large brown furry critter running past the window, over the stone wall, into the cemetery, and up a pine tree that's right through the kitchen window view. And it was a raccoon!
Have we never seen any raccoon in the daytime here? The only time I've seen raccoons is on a trail cam that we put up, and it was at nighttime we watched it, the footage. So I never really seen a real one in real life. So how was it to see it? Like, what behavior did you face?
So it was so interesting because it seemed to have been frightened by something. That's why because it ran up the tree really quickly. And then, I mean, at first I was like, oh, do raccoons usually climb trees? Is that something they do? Or was it so scared that it had to run up there? Because I was trying to watch where it went up in the tree, and it seemed to be struggling a little bit to get down. I realized, you know what, it's got to come down out of the tree at some point. So I went and grabbed the camera, tried to find where it was in the tree, and I got a couple really fun shots. Sometimes it looked like it was just a little bit curious and exploring since it was already up there. And as it was working its way down out of the tree, it seemed to struggle a little bit. It was kind of holding on for dear life at a few points, but it figured it out, and it was really, really fascinating to watch it figure out how to get down. And then it just scurried off into the cemetery, and that was it. And what other critters have we heard tell of around the cottage recently?
It was something that I've been wanting to see for a long time, but we missed it. But it happened here, we heard, because our landlord told us that it had been a bear outside the cottage.
Yes.
I don't know if it was just coming out of hibernation, or if it was on a traveling bear.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it stopped for a little visit, and I'm so sorry we couldn't see it.
But wouldn't you be a little afraid if you did?
I think it would be the cozy, spooky feeling that I like. You know.
So after that, I was like, can we still go in the cemetery and pick violets? Because we had been meaning to do that, and we did, and it seemed to be okay.
It's kind of fascinating to see that there is so many different animals in all different shapes and sizes that lives around the cottage and enjoy it as much as we do.
Yes. What about cobweb critters that have come inside the cottage?
Well, it is getting warmer, and with the warmth we also get a lot of spiders, because it's Cobweb Cottage.
Living up to its name, or that's what inspired the name.
Yeah. So we had a few wolf spider encounters, and they grow pretty big.
Usually we catch and release with this certain cup that we always have nearby, but that cup is too small to be able to catch a wolf spider fast enough before it would run away. So what did you do the other day?
No, I used to use a vase.
You were really quick on your feet there. You were smart to grab the vase, and then, you only have one shot before.
In those moments, I wish I had 8 legs.
And you got it. Well, actually, you didn't get it on the first shot. But then it quickly went
so
again.
scary.
And I screamed.
If you missed it, you know it's somewhere here, and it's so frustrating to know that it's probably watching us. Like, I would be so afraid. Falling asleep, have my mouth open, and would it crawl in my mouth? I don't know.
It's like, I know what you tried to do to me. But
Yeah.
we never try to kill them. So you took it out.
Yeah, I used to take them out into the edge of the forest, and they can live there.
And say, bye. Thanks for visiting. Don't come
and
back.
it looks so fun when they crawl away. It looks like dup, 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 dup.
The wolf spiders, from what I've read, they aren't poisonous or anything. That's why they look scarier than they are. And they don't build webs. They're hunters. So they just kind of come after their prey. So that's kind of what brings them inside sometimes. And
yeah.
Cobweb Cottage living up to its name. Jonas, who is your favorite critter of all?
Tibby,
Who's Tibby?
the chipmunk, the cottage chipmunk.
Yes.
And he lives
so
in the
precious.
stone wall.
Yes. And it is our favorite thing ever to wake up to the sound of him making his little chirping sounds in the morning.
And lately I've seen Tibby with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And they're so cute together.
So a few times we've watched them, like, we can't tell if they're fighting or playing around or maybe a little bit of both, and then they'll just kind of like tumble around, and it goes so fast, and they're so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting for the day that we'll see a baby chipmunk, though.
Mm-hmm.
How have we lived here 5 years and never seen that? But speaking of Tibby, we wanted to share a nice little present we got from one of our patron pals, Fiona, all the way in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And she made this beautiful journal, and look, Tibby's on it.
We have a tree stump like that where he likes to sit on, and this could be a exact painting of the.
It literally
how it
is. Yes. So thank you so much, Fiona.
Thank you
for
so
this
much.
Beautiful journal. I'm not even sure how she can make this by hand. It's just so detailed and intricate, and you have one too.
I got one too, a little bit more dark academia.
Yes.
And this will be a lot of room for ideas and sketches and a lot of creative stuff.
That would be perfect for your art notes.
Yeah.
And I think this one's perfect for nature notes, because we already do keep like a nature note book about the critters, but this would be even better.
Yeah.
So sweet.
So thank you so much, Fiona.
Thank you, Fiona. So we're so incredibly grateful for this community we have here on YouTube and in our Cozy Cottage Club on Patreon. And you all inspire us so much. I know in our last video we talked a lot about creativity and the burnout we've been feeling. And a lot of you said how much our videos help inspire you. Well, thank you so much for helping inspire us again to come out of that creative block.
One special letter we got from our Patreon pal Sally included a written story about Tibby and the cottage and you and me.
I know.
And it was so fun to read it. So we feel like we have to share this with you guys. And with the story, Sally was so kind to include these 2 figurines. It's a salt and pepper shaker. And I guess that this was what inspired the whole story.
I think so. So it's a very charming story, and we thought it would be fun to read it to you. So it's called A Little Spring Magic.
Enjoy. It was a beautiful springtime day at the Cobweb Cottage, the perfect kind of day to enjoy some time out of doors. Smoothing the vintage floral tablecloth out on the soft grass, Lindsay reached into her picnic basket for some pastel-colored depression ware plates. These will make the perfect place settings for a picnic, she thought, as she glanced up to see Jonas carrying a platter of warm berry-filled scones. Those smell delicious, she said. I can't wait to try them. Jonas smiled and set the platter down. You will have to wait a few more minutes, he said, turning to head back to the cottage. I still have to make the tea." A few moments later he returned with a steaming teapot that he placed on the flower-shaped trivet at the edge of the tablecloth. Cups and saucers were now all arranged and charming chintz napkins adorned each plate. "I believe we are finally ready to enjoy our fika time," Jonas said, as they waited for the tea to steep. "This will be our first time trying our own Dandelion Tea blend," he reminded Lindsay. "I know," she answered. "I'm almost as excited to try it as I am your scones, almost." Laughingly, she reached for a scone and placed it on her plate. "All the time it took to pick and dry the flowers will be worth it, I'm sure," Jonas said, as he poured the now ready tea into each cup. After a few minutes, where the only sound that could be heard was that of bird songs and contented chewing, Lindsay and Jonas raised their teacups in salute to each other and the glorious day, clinked them lightly, and each took a sip. Suddenly they both felt rather strange. What was happening?" Lindsay cried, glancing at the stone wall near their picnic spot, which seemed to be growing in size. "The wall is getting bigger," she gasped. "No, I think that we are getting smaller," Jonas answered. He was correct. Looking around them, the tablecloth was now a huge field of woven flowers. The plates were the size of patios, and the teacups could have been used as a set of hot tubs. But that wasn't the only thing that had changed. Twitching her cute little nose, Lindsay realized she had changed too. She was still wearing her yellow hat with the pert bow, but instead of black curls done in a vintage style, she saw brown fur. In fact, she was covered in fur. She looked over at Jonas, but instead of her husband, she saw a squirrel wearing a miniature version of his top hat. "It's okay," he said. "It's me. Are you all right?" Lindsay blinked a few times, then noticed how much the little squirrel opposite her did in fact look a great deal like Jonas. I think so," she stuttered. "What could have possibly caused this to happen?" Just then they both heard a chirping sound from high up on the wall, a chirping that sounded a great deal like laughter. Climbing nimbly down the stones came a small chipmunk, which to the couple's eyes seemed anything but small, and he was laughing. He was laughing at them with their startled, wide-eyed look and trembling limbs. "It's me," he said, once he could control his chirp-like laugh. "It is Tibby, don't you recognize me?" "Tibby," cried Lindsay and Jonas simultaneously. "What is happening?" Lindsay asked. This put Tibby into another fit of laughter. "Well," he said between chirps, "that wasn't dandelions you picked for your tea. No, dandelions grow in this cemetery, didn't you know that?" Jonas patted Lindsay's shaking hand and addressed the chipmunks directly. "What exactly did we pick, Tibby? Do you know?" Tibby rolled his eyes as if everyone should know the answer to that question. "Why, you picked dragon lions, of course," he stated emphatically. "Dragon lions might look similar to dandelions. However, dragon lions have all kinds of magical properties. The one should never be mistaken for the other. But," he added, taking note of their alarmed expressions, "I guess you are realizing that now." Then, catching sight of the unfinished heap of now gigantic-looking scones, he scurried over to the swimming pool-sized platter. "We best break these up, or they will never fit," muttered Tibby. "Well, come on," This fika fest isn't going to move itself, he added briskly to the still-stunned couple. What are we going to do? Lindsay asked Jonas, still uncertain whether she was awake or dreaming. Do? Do? Tibby squeaked gleefully. We are going to have ourselves a fine feast down in my burrow. Come along, help me break up these treats and carry them inside. And we best be quick about it too. It looks like as if we might be in for a springtime shower. It seemed a short time later that the work was done and Tibby's pantry was filled to the brim. Lindsay and Jonas found themselves ensconced in a snug little sitting room with thick moss carpet and birch bark wallpaper. Their host Tibby was working away at the fireplace, making preparations for the tea. A loud clap of thunder boomed overhead as the storm heightened in intensity, making their current locations even cozier. On the flat-topped stone table before them were tiny cups made from acorn caps and quaking aspen leaves at each place setting for use as plates. A hollowed-out pine cone was in the center of the table filled with scone-sized crumbs from Jonas' earlier baking endeavor. Tibby returned to the table carrying a metal teapot with some of the lettering, Orange Crush, still visible on its hammered surface. Tea's all ready, he chirped happily, seating himself across from his guests. It's so nice to have you join me, he added. I do so love having company. Jonas smiled at their host and quoted one of his favorite quotes. Time shared is always time well spent. Well said, chirped Tibby, as he poured out the warm fresh brewed tea. I also wanted to tell you how much I appreciate all the bits of baked goodies you often leave for me on the stone wall. By the way, he added, seeing the quizzical looks on Lindsay and Jonas's faces. This is Dandelion Tea, with a bit of sassafras root grated in for extra zing. It's my favorite. Both of Tibby's guests were startling to adjust to their strange circumstances and surroundings as they relaxed into the straw-stuffed cushions on the bent twig chairs where they were seated. Thank you, Lindsay murmured graciously as she took the proffered beverage, raising the cup to take a sip. It is delicious, she added, as Tibby passed around the scones. Jonas nodded, taking a few sips between nibbles. Tibby entertained his guests with snippets of song between rounds of tea. He had a sweet high-pitched voice that lent itself well to woodland folk songs, of which he knew quite a few. Once the repast was consumed, all three tiny creatures found themselves feeling rather sleepy from a combination of a full tummy, warm room and the muffled sound of pattering raindrops. Leading the sleepy couple down a curving passageway, Tibby offered to put his guests up for the night. It sounds as if it's still storming up above, Tibby commented while stifling a yawn. I'm sure you will be quite comfortable here in the rose room, he added. Before them stood a carved door with vines and roses all done by a very skilled hand. Oh, Lindsay whispered appreciatively. Did you do this carving? It's beautiful. Look, Jonas. Tibby was quite proud of himself, despite his sheepish grin. Jonas isn't the only artist on the block, he chirped, which caused Jonas to agree much to Tibby's delight. Then, waving his tiny paw, he wished them a good night's sleep and padded off down the hallway. The couple felt upon entering the room that it was quite like being in a fairy tale. The bed was intricately carved with a soaring canopy covered in live vines and rosebuds. The room was all a twinkle with pinpricks of light that moved about and blinked on and off. They recognized the greenish glow as belonging to hundreds of fireflies, which seemed quite content with their subterranean location. Rose-patterned fabric covered the feather bed, a fabric that looked remarkably like some scraps left over from one of Lindsay's sewing projects. The entire room was filled with a fine perfume of roses that added to the couple's feelings of sleepiness. In mere minutes, tucked under the rose bedspread, Lindsay and Jonas were both fast asleep. Drip, drop, drip. The mild spring rain was just starting, filtering through the tree leaves above. Brushing her hand across her face, Lindsay awoke from a deep dream-filled sleep. She was laying on a patch of soft grass next to their picnic spot, her crooked arm as a pillow. The remains of their tea party were strewn across the floral tablecloth, one empty teacup laying on its side, the other catching a random raindrop with a plink, plink. Raising up slowly, she noticed Jonas seated across from her, with his back leaning against the stone wall. His eyes were closed and his top hat had slid down across his forehead. "Jonas," she called over to her sleeping husband as she started to gather up the plates. "Jonas, it's starting to rain." Straightening his long limbs, Jonas looked like a cat as he woke with a yawn and a stretch. "What a strange dream I had," he said, looking about as he got his bearings. Totally awake, he began to tell Lindsay about his dream as he reached out to help her gather their belongings. "I dreamed our tea had magical powers," he said, but a startled Lindsay interrupted him. "That changed us into squirrels," she blurted, stopping what she was doing to stare wide-eyed. "Yes. How did you know? Was I talking in my sleep?" Jonas asked. Shaking her head, Lindsay reached for her husband's hand before answering. "That was my dream too," she said softly. "But we couldn't have dreamt the same dream," Jonas replied. "No, I don't think that's possible," Lindsay answered. "But if we weren't dreaming the same dream, what really happened?" Just then, they both heard a chirping sound from high up on the wall, a chirping that sounded a great deal like laughter.